What's up, everybody? Just want to tell you can come support the show real quick. We're going to try to do this in record time tonight.
Record time,
man. Truthzilla.org/donate for any value donations. You can go watch this not on YouTube, but on rockfin.com/Truthzilla. rockfin.com/Truthzilla. If you want an awesome Truthzilla shirt, we got a new one on there right now that says, "What part of freedom don't you understand?"
Yes.
That is truthzilla.org/shirts. Our sponsors, if you're feeling foggy and crappy and have
it's phenomenal. We always should just
autoimmune disorders or any sort of vaccine injuries or anything like that, you can go to truthtrs.com.
If you just look up at the sky and see what they're spraying.
Depression, anxiety, if you've been on pharmaceutical medication for any length of time or chronic things, because that was what they did to me. And I think I said this the last time that I podcasted with you guys, but even Cheney, our friend Cheney, noticed that from the time that we started podcasting till now, which has been just over a year, and in these months that I've taken TRS, that my cognition and my ability memory. To all of it, and I noticed it. But before I said anything to her, she said something to me, so it's pretty great.
Yep, learn more at truthtrs.com. Truthtrs.com.
It's Advanced TRS.
Advanced TRS, and they have new CBD, Advanced CBD.
My sister bought it.
Oh, nice.
She just got it 2 days ago.
Well,
Yeah.
She'll have to give us a testimonial.
Okay.
And they also have Advanced Fulvic Acid too. So for your full holistic health needs, truthtrs.com. Also, you guys, Cody's Crystals. Cody on Instagram at Cody's_crystals, CODYS. He's got the coolest gems, rocks, and all that good stuff. Tell him Truthzilla sent you. At least go give him a follow. Friend of the show, and we would not be here without him.
And don't you guys forget, please, if you can't support us financially, like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us beat the algorithm.
Please share.
5-star comment.
Yeah, 5-star reviews, because we got one star since we
really
pushing it on the Apple podcast. Yeah.
Did they say something to you, or just give us one star?
They said something like, "Do people believe this crap?" Or something
so it's
like
one
that.
of those.
It's one of those.
As long as they're not talking about my audio issues, which I'm very self-conscious about.
Oh, come on now.
Okay. So anyway, you guys. All right. Yeah. So
we need some 5-star comments about the great audio that Scott puts together over here at Truthzilla until we get our 4 mics, and then
there you go.
We'll have different audio. Yeah, but for now, you do a great job, dude.
Okay, awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, guys. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Truthzilla. I am Megan, sitting here with Scott and Ed. Our returning guest tonight is Ryan Hartwig, former content moderator at Cognizant, a subcontractor of Facebook, who saw behind the curtain and blew the whistle on Facebook's criminal level of censorship. In 2020, he partnered with Project Veritas and exposed 9 months' worth of undercover footage and brought to light the tactics that Facebook uses to manipulate public opinion and stifle free speech. Ryan has since become a fierce advocate for free speech, opposing censorship in all of its forms. He founded the Hartwig Foundation for Free Speech and is the author of the new book, Behind the Mask of Facebook, a whistleblower's shocking story of big tech bias. Ryan, welcome back to the Truth Train.
Thanks for having me. And it's great to be back. I was here. When was our first interview? Was that October?
I feel like it was before that. Hold on, I just had it pulled up here. It was definitely last year. So I'd heard you making the rounds, and I can't remember exactly where I first heard you. Maybe on InfoWars, honestly.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I want to get him on. And then I reached out, and I can't remember how we got your. I think I had Facebook. I think I reached out on Facebook Messenger, I believe. Ironically.
Yes.
And you were like, heck yeah, let's do a show. And then I was so grateful because we were talking about before the show. So yeah, you were our episode 10 of the Truthzilla podcast. Awesome. You were our third interview, and that was August 9th, 2020 is when it released.
Wow.
So just over a year ago. Yeah. So
that was pretty early on. Yeah, you guys caught me early on.
Yeah.
So it's been a year. It's been over a year since I went public, and it's amazing what's happened in the last year, and I'm back to working like a 9-to-5 job right now.
Yeah.
Which one of you knows about, right? Because one of you just got fired from your 9 to 5.
That's me. So I'm kind of like you and I've kind of switched roles here. So now I am like doing the rounds and like speaking up against all the tyranny that I experienced in the workplace, and getting a little bit of like I was on Last American Vagabond earlier today, dude. Like what a trip. What a trip, to reach that audience. Such an honor. Shout out to Ryan Christian and all the work that he's doing. But it's important. It's important, And I'm under no delusion the fact that I'll probably have to go back to work here very shortly. But I'm trying to ride that for the time being and just use my time to maximize the message of what we're seeing in the world is not okay. What we're seeing in the world is not okay. You know, particularly, and Ryan, I'm sorry to derail. We'll get right back to you here, but like really, the biggest thing that this agency that I used to work for is doing is that they're only giving medical services to people who've been vaccinated. So the big scary thing that we've all been fearing, you know, it's a drug and alcohol treatment center, and they're only admitting patients to their residential facility who've been vaccinated. So if you are struggling with drug or alcohol addiction and you're unvaccinated, then your life doesn't matter at all. So
that's insane. Yeah, no, like that's an important part of this conversation because, you know, my book talks about, you know, big tech censorship behind the mask of Facebook, and big tech is censoring people who speak out against the vaccine.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and in the last year, like I've done over 133 interviews and talked about these issues, but yeah, let's give a plug to your GiftSendGo, giftsendgo.com/novax, right?
That's it. Yep.
Or
2 X's. That's it. Yep. But anyway,
and I donated. I chipped in a little bit, and it's tough.
Yeah, I thank you, man. I really appreciate
that. Yeah.
Well, I think in both your guys' cases, the people just need to know that there are people that are standing up.
Yeah.
And even if they're experiencing, loss of jobs and all the different hardships that may come along with it, it's worth it to stand up. And if enough of us do it, then we can change the tide, right?
Yeah, totally. And like what I'm going through right now, man, like I look to you and, guys like Zach and I see how you guys have carried yourselves into the world and just standing in your truth, against all like the evil forces that are piled against us, you know what I mean? And your guys' bravery kind of has helped me a little bit in what I'm going through right now and giving me hope to know that, where I may have once been fearful, I actually have hope, and it's like this tyranny has made me stronger is what I've been saying, you know what I mean? And so like I look up to you, I look up to what you did and the steps that you took, and it's just like, it's what we need in this world. And it literally is going to be, I feel, our solution and our way out of this is people on the inside, insiders of all these organizations. I just saw an article about, 2 higher up officials at the FDA coming forward and quitting and resigning in a public manner in protest to the way that, this has become politicized and how honestly, how criminal it is. And I feel like our way out of this in all aspects is going to be from people on the inside who have had enough and decide to do the right thing.
Well, it brings that whole that like you say, like there's power in numbers, and and that whole the censorship, it divides us, it keeps us from being able to communicate and being able to plan together. But another thing that Project Veritas has just done, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of what's going on with the teacher in the Natomas school district in California. But this guy's finally looks like he's gonna lose his job now because of the outcry, because of what Project Veritas was able to expose through that. But it was the public outcry. It was not just that he did it, but it was that the light shined on it. And so that so many people could overwhelmingly say, we don't stand for this. And that's what it really takes, because so many of us don't stand for it.
Totally.
Yeah. And when I worked at Facebook, so I was there for about 2 years total. But I recorded screenshot or, filmed with a hidden camera for about 9 months. And I was able to film conversations that were posted previous to when I got hired. So there's a post, I believe it was 2017, where Facebook posted and gave us instructions about Antifa protests. So they said there was mass protests going around in multiple cities all at the same time by Antifa. And they said, we want to remind everyone, Antifa is not a hate organization. and so they specifically said that Antifa is not a hate org. So the same time they're putting Proud Boys and Gavin McInnes on these lists, they're specifically excluding Antifa. So then that's going back 3-4 years. So that's pretty interesting to look at. And now we have the expose from Project Veritas, which is making huge waves in the media, national media. But yeah, this teacher at a school in Sacramento is just openly talking about violence against people. And it's funny because he's like, all the Maoists or the people against Maoism who died in the streets or got shot. He's like, they probably shouldn't have been shot.
They probably shouldn't
have. Maybe you shouldn't be advocating for an ideology that shoots innocent people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and then his blatantly saying that he wants to essentially terrorize these kids and scare them into this ideology. I mean, it's just the brainwashing that we already know goes on. I mean, just but and I guess sort of what bothers me is nobody, no other teacher, the principal, no staff member saw these flags hanging in his room or questioned anything before then. The parents of the child that he specifically talked about that said he had a problem with the flag on the wall, nobody spoke up till now, or maybe they have and it's been silenced.
Yeah,
more than likely.
And to say that, like, his statement was, well, if it makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Like, okay, like,
it makes
when was that
fascists
ever
uncomfortable.
a justification? Like,
yeah.
The whole idea
like,
of fascism in this day and age has completely shifted. I don't believe that, like, you know, I've been just it's been completely inverted. Like, I've looked up recently on multiple occasions, like, different websites' interpretations, and a lot of the times they say, well, scholars don't necessarily agree on certain fundamental aspects of what fascism is. But, you know, it always starts off in all of them, whether it's like Encyclopedia Britannica or like this, like Fascism for Kids. There's this good education website. Well, it's an education website for kids that talks about what fascism and how to teach kids what fascism is. Or Wikipedia. If you go to all of them, the very first sentence, it always says it's a far-right extremist thing. And so they implant that in your head right away that it's a far-right ideology. But then when you look down,
the exact opposite.
Yes, when you look down at the bullet points about what it actually is, you know, it talks about a lot about like just pointing at one faction of the society as to blame, right? Like the diseased portion of one aspect of society. It's very strong on like nationalism, and I feel like a lot of it's shifted away from necessarily nationalism in the sense like borders and flags, but more of just like an ideology that they can all rally around, and this is the one truth, and anything outside of this truth, you deserve to die. Scientism, the mask, like certain things like that. And if you look at what they define fascism as, and a big part of it too is the ability of the government to kind of take over private industry and dictate how private industry operates, and usually to serve the state. And so what we see here, what we're seeing now, is literally, if you take a step back and look at it from a distance, what we see is corporations that are deciding which one of their products gets to be injected into your body, and they're using the government to enforce that in order to obtain basic human rights. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
So like the Biden administration coming out and calling for the boosters before the FDA even approves it, like that. That sounds pretty fascist.
That's fascist. That's fascism. That's the government literally dictating the way private practice works. And so what we're seeing is literal fascism emerging, and I would say the likes of which this world has never seen. And its instruments, and they're using. And what I really wanted to talk to you about, Ryan, is I've heard you talk about the one of the strategies we can take to argue against them or bring this to courts, if it can be won in courts, which I still don't know about. But the idea of like the Fifth Amendment, like you talk about, like how can we attack the federal government on this? Because it's I don't know. I mean, there's all these people that are attacking big tech. You know, Trump's got a lawsuit. You know, there's all these folks have lawsuits against big tech. Yeah. But like, what is your thoughts on what's an attack vector we can take here?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, and then as far as nationalism goes, I actually have a whole chapter devoted to that on how Facebook treats nationalism, because in general they've tried to criminalize nationalism, and so Facebook's policies, they'd have us track work trends like Boogaloo and Civil War and impeachment, but with nationalism, Facebook took a stance on like white nationalism. Of course, all of us here oppose racism. We're not.
Yep.
Well, in any sense, we're not 100%. White supremacists at all.
No.
So, but Facebook said basically, well, white nationalism is worse than black nationalism or any other kind of nationalism. So, like, I don't know. Sometimes people like just add words to the word nationalism. Nationalism is not a racist ideology. Now, if you add a racist ideology to it, then yes, it is. But somehow for Facebook, like, one race is like worse than another, like so anyways, so there we touch on that a lot in the book on nationalism, and these countries like Hungary and Poland that are nationalist countries that are trying to protect their borders are basically censored more than other countries. So Facebook's policies act against their countries when they're trying to protect their borders. As far as big tech, so this is a huge topic. So we had Trump's lawsuit, and it's a step in the right direction. It's good, but let's be honest. Like, a lot of people were like, well, he's doing this now. And then if you get the text from Trump, you got like 10 texts that day, like, hey, support Trump and his lawsuit. So his lawsuit's good. And I think they chose some good judges. his lawsuit is basically, hey, the government did the government have the authority to delegate in the first place to give this authority to Congress, to these companies? Mm-hmm. So do they have the right to restrict our free speech on the internet to begin with? So that's part of the argument. Now, the best analogy I can think of is if you go to McDonald's, and I used to work security, so I'd kick people off property all the time. I would trespass people. But if you're at McDonald's and someone's causing trouble at McDonald's, like throwing drinks on the ground, making a mess, who are you gonna call? You're gonna call the authorities, right? So you're gonna call the police. They're gonna come to the private property and then kick that person off. And right now, what's happening is like Facebook is McDonald's and Facebook is also the police. So like they're doing both jobs. Because if you get banned from Facebook, who kicks you off? Facebook does. It's not the FEC coming in and kicking you off. It's Facebook itself. So they're judge, jury, executioner. So that's the current legal theory. Is I'm working with a guy named Jason Fick, FYK, and he sued Facebook starting a couple years ago. His case went to the Supreme Court in January. Of course, the Supreme Court chose to not hear his case, which was, and some of those ideas were supported by Clarence Thomas. But so right now, we're trying to sue the United States government under the Fifth Amendment. So, you can sue Facebook and Twitter all day, but who gave Twitter and Facebook the authority to do what they're doing? The government did. And so under the Fifth Amendment, basically, they're depriving us of liberty and property by taking down our posts and whatnot. And so, and there's no measurable bounds, and there's no, what was the other thing? There's a couple other guidelines that have to do with that amendment. But obviously the community standards are not measurable and they're arbitrary. And so that's one current legal theory, is to sue the United States government under the Fifth Amendment. So he's forming the Social Media Freedom Foundation, a 501c4 out of Pennsylvania, and I'll be supporting him with those efforts. But it's funny because Jason Fick's like, he understands Section 230 more than anyone. Mm-hmm. He's not an attorney, but all these attorneys are like, they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. So he's got some, I won't name any names, but he's got some really prominent attorneys possibly hopping on to join this. So it's not a class action, which is different. Trump's lawsuit is a class action. It's a little more expensive or harder to do. His is, he's not suing for damages or anything. It's just a lawsuit against the United States government.
Okay, perfect. And I feel like there's a lot of Fifth Amendment stuff that could be articulated, but have you heard any talk about so using our First Amendment protections, right? So for example, obviously freedom of speech is being impacted, but I would argue in our case, we've been censored on multiple occasions and we're constantly being shadow banned. It's easily provable. I consider myself a journalist. I'm out there reporting on current events and getting information out there. What about freedom of the press? Does that get talked about in your circles at all? Is the idea that freedom of the press itself is under attack?
That's a good question. So, Facebook's policies actually protect journalists more than other people. Yeah. So there's a policy called violence and incitement. So under this policy, if I say, we should kill, the president or someone like that, then we can delete that kind of speech. Sure. And so journalists and, heads of state have more protections. But interestingly enough, if you're a hate figure on the hate figure list, like Gavin McInnes or Tommy Robinson, you're allowed to be attacked. So I can literally say, I want to go kill Gavin McInnes, and that's allowed. But that's another story. So, but yeah, journalists are kind of a protected group, but who defines as a journalist and who's considered a journalist? Because anybody can say, I'm a citizen journalist, and you are under the law, like the freedom of press should apply, but Facebook can really twist that. And for crying out loud, they just banned from Instagram the mother of one of the fallen soldiers in Afghanistan. Yeah. So if they're gonna apply that arbitrarily, then they can just pick and choose. Who's considered a journalist? But so that would be more like the First Amendment, right?
Yeah,
freedom of.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm surprised. I don't know if you know Ivory Hecker. She went public a couple months ago.
Yep.
With Fox News and Project Veritas. She's still on Instagram, which I'm shocked by, and she puts out all these videos about COVID. But yeah, how many journalists have been censored about the COVID issue? So yeah, it's really a good question.
Totally. And it really would come down to us being able to prove that the U.S. government had a hand in these dealings. The U.S. government instructing these organizations to censor. But I feel like that happened. Didn't Jen Psaki say something like that? The White House press secretary say something recently about partnering with these big tech companies in order to squelch medical misinformation. So isn't that literally the U.S. government breaking the First Amendment?
She said we're flagging posts for Facebook. So they're basically flagging posts and sending them over to Facebook. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like the opposite of what we did at Facebook. Because like if we found a suicide video that was live, like we would submit that to law enforcement, right? So we're the private company sending information to the government. Mm-hmm. But this is the opposite. It's like the government saying, "Oh, we found this post. We're going to send it to Facebook." Why would you send it to Facebook? Are they higher up in the hierarchy than you? Mm-hmm. Like, do you report to Facebook? Like, are they your boss? Like, that's the other key aspect of some of these lawsuits is giving instruction. Like in California, you had an activist named Siaka Masako, mm-hmm. and he was the state government was communicating with Facebook and Instagram and saying, "Hey, we need to censor this post, censor this guy." And so that's another example. And then Dr. Shiva had a similar lawsuit in Massachusetts, but he actually left. He dropped that lawsuit. I don't know if he got paid off, but I was talking to Jason Vick about it, and Dr. Shiva withdrew from his lawsuit in Massachusetts regarding big tech.
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard about that piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Man, so give us an update, Ryan. So it's been about a year. I know that you've been doing some big things, man. I've seen you in some big shows. I know you're at CPAC. Like, what has the journey been like for you ever since we last talked? What was it, August 9th? So a little over a year ago. Yeah.
So, so since then I went to Brazil in September of that year and met with a congresswoman down there. And let's see where else.
Yeah, that's right. Because you were working a lot with the Brazilian folks back then too. Yeah, we were talking to you, doing a lot of appearances down there. That's cool.
Yep. So just trying to spread the word down there, and they have a big election coming up next year, the presidential election. So Bolsonaro, their conservative populist president, won in 2018, and he's up for re-election. And so it's an uphill battle because their Supreme Court is so corrupt. And I met with people down there who, the Supreme Court literally raided their homes just because they were supporting political candidates. And it's like, it's funny because now we're seeing this same, this January 6th commission doing kind of the same thing. Yeah. And that list of like 25 people where they wanted all the text messages and info of those people, I've communicated with like 5 of those people. And so it's funny because I, believe it or not, I still use I'm on my dad's cell plan.
There you go.
kind of funny, but I'm like, Dad, hey, be on the lookout because they might be, going through your text messages. Yeah. Just let them know it wasn't you, it was me.
There you go. Yeah. Wow. Just the fact that it's come to that is just unacceptable. Unacceptable. Like, what about this new? And we'll get back to your story in a sec. But what do you hear about the whole new thing about how they're going to be like combing through all of your photos and all these files and stuff looking for child porn, right? So they're like basically, okay, what? So no one here is advocating that people should be having child porn on their phones, but at the same time they're using that as a justification. So now if you have an Apple phone or a Mac computer, then they're going to be periodically scanning all your images to make sure that you don't have anything questionable on there. So that comes out.
I have a story about that related to that. Totally. That's insane. But in my book, so I was writing my book for about 6 months. And I was going through and I found actually something new that I hadn't seen before. And it was an exception that Facebook gave for child nudity. All right. So there's this children's band in Brazil. And there was a bunch of like naked 5-year-olds on the cover of the album. And Facebook is like, we're going to give a newsworthy exception for this image, even though it does violate our child nudity policy because of artistic value and it's in the public interest. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Okay. So why is Apple like going through jumping all these loopholes to like censor stuff when like Facebook is just allowing child nudity just because like,
yeah. That's like, what is it? The Led Zeppelin album cover too. I heard there was some controversy over that too. The Houses of the Holy,
he's suing now, but like, didn't he reposed for the cover, like 5 times growing up. Now he's suing him, saying, I don't know.
Well, no, you know what that
That
is.
was
and so,
I thought that was a Nirvana.
Yeah, so
oh, is that Nirvana? Okay.
Nirvana. We covered this on the Clowntown update, and so maybe we can do it for our regular audience here because it's worth doing. Okay. So you guys may have not heard all the jokes that were just the jokes write themselves, dude. The jokes write themselves, right? Okay, so this guy, right? So Nirvana back in the 90s, right? They have the cover
the
of
baby
Nevermind.
floating.
Yeah, okay, so everyone would see the iconic image of Nevermind, the Nirvana album cover, right?
Yeah.
The baby swimming in the pool, chasing that dollar, right? Those little wiener hanging down, right? Okay, yes. So now, fast forward to 2021, that kid has since grown up, if you've not heard, folks, and he is now suing the estate of Nirvana, Courtney Love, the photographer, the production company, the whole thing for demonstration of child pornography. Now, no one here is defending child pornography or putting naked children on album covers or anything like that. But you can't tell me for 1 second that kid has not gone up to some lady at a bar and be like, "Hey, baby, how you doing? You want to see my penis again?" And she'll be like, "I've never seen your penis before." And be like, "Oh yeah, you have." Boom. You've never used that. Right. Come on. You can't tell me. You can't tell me that he is
I can honestly say, if I was that guy, I would not use that pickup line.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
Anyways, Megan's signing off, so
okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well,
and that's how you got fired from your job. It wasn't really the
yes,
you actually told that joke at work, right?
Totally.
Oh god, yeah. No, I would never do such a thing. But they're probably gonna see it now. The cat's out of the bag.
Oh, shite.
But Ed had the best joke. Come on, Ed.
Well, I just say it's the same as the baby. He's just older now, just chasing the same dollar, right? It's the same.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like there are some historical exceptions where Facebook does legitimately allow, child nudity. So like, you have the Holocaust photos and they give an exception for that. And there's one from I believe.
Except for they don't
Vietnam.
allow Holocaust photos anymore, or at least none of the ones I try to post.
Oh yeah, she keeps getting.
They
dinged.
pull me down anytime even if I post Hitler's direct quotes from his book, they pull me down for hate speech and inciting violence.
Yeah. When we're trying to make connections between what we're seeing in the world today. But yes, go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that is odd. Like, so when I was there, they had policies about like Hitler and just so for at one point you could share photos of paraphernalia of like the Nazi regime. So if your grandpa had like some World War II relic from the Nazi party, you could take a photo of it and post it and say, "Hey, this is my grandpa's," blah, blah, blah. But then they changed that and they said, "Nope, we can't allow it at all."
Yeah.
So they went stricter on that. But yeah, this is, some of this is history, and especially if you're sharing it in like a condemning context, like, "Hey, I don't support Nazis, but here's."
Dude, that's
like some memorabilia.
Point. It's so apparently
they don't want parallels drawn between what they're doing and what history was, because most people don't know what history was, and I think that's why they pull it.
You can't put history up without the person being able to draw the parallel.
Right.
At this point, that's the problem.
And apparently Hitler isn't on that approved list of people that you can legitimately attack, right? So, but that's what it is. Like Megan obviously is not like advocating for the practices that Adolf Hitler stood for, but she's doing it. She's showing like. Okay,
parallels.
You guys. Yeah, parallels to what happened back then and what he stated as his beliefs and how it's being used by the government.
That ideology is being used against us now.
Today, 100%. And you're right. They can't afford to have that being exposed. They can't afford to have this whole herd of sheep that they have convinced that like Trump and Trump supporters are actual
can't have
Nazis,
lights turning on in heads.
Actual Nazis, right?
Thinking's not allowed here.
Yes, exactly. Thinking's not allowed here. When in fact, the actual Nazis are the folks that are advocating for mandatory vaccines and the denial of human rights on the basis of your vaccination status.
Parading naked 5-year-olds across Facebook.
There you go. Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So what we're up against is a new kind of evil, man.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it just goes to show like Facebook can change, modify their policies, because when I was there, a couple of years ago, obviously those kinds of things were allowed, so they can just change their policies at a whim. Anything that's a Republican talking point, whether it's Eric Ciamarella or whether it's abortion, they can just twist their policy and make exceptions whenever they would like. Another exception that I don't think I discussed with you guys is regarding immigration. So, and this is in my book as well, Behind the Mask of Facebook. It's you can buy it on Amazon, but it's also on bookshop.org and IndieBound. But anyways, immigration. So Facebook allowed, obviously they're like, okay, we have a policy against human smuggling. You can't say you're going to smuggle people. But what's fascinating is you're allowed to be smuggled, like what would you call that? Smugglee? Would you be a smugglee if you're
yeah, the one being smuggled, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you say I want to be crossed over the border, can a coyote reach out to me? I want to be trafficked across the border. That's allowed.
Oh.
So you just can't be the coyote saying, "Hey, I'm sending people across the border. DM me, $500 for the crossing." So that's really fascinating. And also, you're allowed to discuss border security. So if you say, "Hey, the Italian border, the border patrol is missing. It doesn't patrol this area from 9 to 5 p.m. Or 5 to 9 p.m." That's allowed. So you can discuss how to evade law enforcement at the border. And that's specifically stated in their policy. I have the screenshot. So I think that's just incredible that Facebook would allow people attempting to evade like immigration authorities. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you were there, what was kind of the demographic at Cognizant or at Facebook? Like, did you have any allies there? Did you have any people that you could confide in? Like, particularly like supervisors. Did you have any like supervisors that were sympathetic to the cause, or what did that look like?
Most of the supervisors were pretty woke. I think they did it on purpose because the supervisors would be the ones interfacing with Facebook directly.
Yeah.
So I applied for that position a couple of times and never got it. So we had one of my supervisors, Sean Browder, was very woke and he was a big Bernie supporter.
Yeah.
And so there were some people that I confided in, like I would talk to, I trusted, I knew they were conservative. We had quite a few military veterans. So, I would say overall the demographic there, and this is in Phoenix, Arizona, and being a contractor for Facebook. So I worked for Cognizant. So I would say that the pool of employees is fairly diverse as far as ideologies, not as bad as like, San Francisco.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's, you're still kind of constrained. Like you could give feedback, but if you raise it to your woke supervisor, they would just kill that feedback. Of course, they wouldn't communicate that to Facebook. So like I did have conversations and I filmed with the hidden camera, like a lot of conversations with Sean Browder, my manager, the Bernie supporter. And he explained the policy and the workings of it, but that's the thing. In Congress, they always ask Facebook, well, why don't you hire more conservatives? Well, it's not so much that, because the policy itself is designed to be against conservatives. So as an employee, I'm just trying to make my boss happy, make Facebook happy. I'm following their guidelines, which happen to silence conservatives.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any contacts that are still there? Anybody that are sympathetic to the cause that are still in there?
I wish that we still had the contract. So Cognizant had a 3-year, $200 million contract, but that ended and we terminated the project early in February of 2020. There are some other contracting companies. There's one called Accenture, I believe, and there's one called, I forget, there's one just outside of Dallas. And so I, of course, I was filming with Project Very South at the end, and I suggested to them, hey, why don't you reach out to these other companies and get someone on the inside? But yeah, it's always a struggle to get information out. And I'm just shocked that we haven't had a Twitter insider yet, like a Twitter person come forward. I think that would be really cool.
Totally. Well, there was somebody pretty high up at Facebook that was exposing like the little weekly calls with Zuckerberg, like himself, right? Where he was talking about certain things like rules for thee, not me type of stuff. I can't remember the exact pieces of it, but have you personally had anybody reach out to you from Facebook, like either whether anonymously or not, just saying, hey, thank you for what you're doing or anything like that?
I met a guy who used to work for Facebook, like in the higher echelons of Facebook, who I met in Arizona a couple of months back, and he was like working with the upper management, and he was investigating accounts. So he was former law enforcement, so he would be able to go into people's direct messages and look for shady stuff. So I wasn't going into people's direct messages. I was looking at reported content. But yeah, he was saying, this guy that I talked to, he was there about a year and then he quit. And his last words to the group of people he worked with was like, hey, just do your best to keep Zuckerberg out of jail. So he saw the shit that was going on, and he literally thought that Zuckerberg was going to go to jail. So, I mean, we did have the criminal referral last year to the DOJ from Mark Zuckerberg that I helped contribute to. That was from Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Sure.
But I mean, when you have a culture where, in those videos you're mentioning, those recorded videos, and it's on the back cover of my book, but I'll just read it. Mark Zuckerberg on how he treats leakers. And Zuckerberg said, quote, "I've been clear that we have a number of efforts to find people, and we terminate people and pursue the recourse that we have when we identify them." And that was after the Morgan Kaman Facebook data technician came forward. But like, yeah, I mean, you're in a culture where we're going to find and punish leakers. But yeah, it's insane. It's almost like, I mean, I don't like to compare myself to people, but, and obviously like there's a different level of magnitude with like Edward Snowden or Assange, but like
still,
imagine if the governments are coming out and saying we want to punish Assange. But yeah, that's the kind of culture that Facebook has, and it's just a really toxic culture.
Has Facebook taken any sort of legal action against you at all for anything you've done?
No. This book, if you notice, it has Children's Health Defense on the back. And that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So awesome. I hear he's got some pretty top-notch attorneys. So they haven't received any threats or legal action yet.
Wow. Well, see, there you go, man. How'd you get hooked up with Children's Health Defense? That's so cool.
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
I think it was through the book was amazing. So I started working on it in August. My literary agent Joanna was working with Zach Voorhees, the Google whistleblower, and so I just kind of hopped on that train. And I'd never published before, and like it was a new experience. So I started writing the book in August, and in February I'd written about 70,000 words. But it's basically just like pure analysis of all the policy.
Yeah.
And then my co-author Kent Heckenlively, he did an amazing job. He helped me just make it more of a narrative, make it more fun to read. And he co-authored with Judy Mikovits, Plague of Corruption.
Yep.
So it's been if you think about it, it's pretty remarkable because like I've never published before. And just a little over a year from when I went public, I now have a book on the shelves. So
yeah, man, that's quite an accomplishment, man. That's super cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So tell us. Okay. So and then Children's Health Defense, they just kind of help produce it and are kind of like acting like like just kind of like that scene in The Godfather, right, where like they drive by and like Marlon Brando's like in the hospital and they're just like standing out front like that, just like he's like, all right, stick your hand in the jacket, just like that. So that's Children's Health Defense. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Oh yes.
Awesome, man. That's so cool. So tell us a little bit about the book. I mean, you told us a little bit already, but give us a rundown.
So yeah, the book it's got 300 plus pages, so it's quite hefty.
Okay.
It's like about 90,000 words. I wanted to write a book, and you know how people write a book and it's like, well, technically it needs to be 50,000 words. So I made sure it's more than 50,000.
Okay. I didn't know that. Good to know.
But yeah, let me go through basically the essence of it is like, hey, I'm this guy that grew up Mormon, very, very naive, like very sheltered. And here I am, I get a job when I'm like, when I'm nearly 30 years old, and I have to see pornography on a daily basis. I have to see beheadings, cartel violence. So the first couple of chapters talk about that experience, and the mental health aspect is really fascinating. And so that's part of the book. The foreword is by Patrick Byrne, the former CEO of Overstock, and it's also endorsed by Dennis Prager. But yeah, so the first couple of chapters talk about that, and then I'm just pulling open the table of contents here. Yeah, so I mean, dude, like it's very broad. Like it covers a lot of different topics. I talk about Greta Thunberg.
Gritarded, right? Hashtag Gritarded.
Yeah, the hashtag retarded. How we're not attacking Greta, guys. We're just saying Greta was attacked, and Facebook made an exception to give her extra protections. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. With the 17-year-old climate activist from is it Sweden?
I believe so.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
that's what I would have said if you had asked.
I've heard you talk about that whole shenanigans too. So that was the no disrespect, no disrespect.
Yeah, we're not trashing on Greta,
no.
Although she's putting herself out there, so she has to be open to criticism. And I talk about just how worldwide this Facebook's policy is worldwide. Believe it or not, Facebook had a training deck for the Afghan elections. Yeah.
Okay.
So I briefly mentioned that. And then I talk about racism, obviously, Facebook in black and white, how Facebook would protect Black nationalists, but not white nationalists, so they wouldn't be treated on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And then anytime that Trump spoke, like Facebook would just say, "Oh, hate speech."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Trump's giving a State of the Union speech. Look for hate speech, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Trump's in Israel. Look for hate speech. Oh, Trump's talking about MS-13. Oh, he's a racist. Like that was Trump. Facebook was basically just mirroring like the mainstream media's kind of slant on Trump the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's 22 chapters. And what's fascinating too is I talk about my time filming with a hidden camera with Project Veritas and how that all worked out, and that's really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, I talk about Antifa, how Facebook treats police officers and drug cartels. Do you know who Caitlin Bennett is, the AR-15 girl?
Caitlin Bennett. Yeah. She's on I've seen her videos, like just like what is it, like destroying liberals with facts or something like that, like just going around.
Yeah. So I talk about her in my book because she was targeted by Facebook, and basically there was this really gross photo of her that was left up. We don't know if it was her. Basically, to paint the image, okay, there's a photo being circulated on social media of a girl passed out in a bathroom, like a dorm room, with like poop coming out of her backside. It was like really, really gross.
Oh.
And people were claiming it was Caitlin Bennett. Now, if it truly was Caitlin Bennett, then we could allow the photo because she's a public figure. But if it wasn't, then you would have to delete it for like mocking someone who's defecating, you know?
Yeah.
And there's also something called a creep shot where you could delete it for sexual exploitation of adults, where you can't take a picture of like, upskirts or anything like that, where someone's not aware the photo's being taken.
Right.
And then, yeah, so I talk about that. Abortion. We talk about abortion and how Facebook has a stance about abortion, and basically fetuses are not considered human, and abortion is not considered a violent death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Word for word, their own policy.
Wow.
So that's a lot of it. We talk about, I mean, my time dealing with HR at work.
Ooh,
so
that's my favorite topic. Yeah. Man,
gotta love HR.
Oh, gotta love HR, baby. Shout out to all the HR people. What a mess they're caught in. Like, holy shit. You better come down on the right side of history, folks, because you know where you're at. You know what the right thing is to do. Like you will be judged. Don't worry.
Yep.
So here's something that just occurred to me. I really am curious about this, Ryan, and I wish maybe I had asked you this a few months ago, but like, let's talk about like those few months where you were going undercover and you were documenting footage. Okay, so like, what did that look like? Can you talk about like what type of equipment you used? How did you make it so that the subject that you were filming wasn't aware of you documenting the conversation?
Yeah, so I mean, you gotta. I can't really go into too much detail.
Gotcha.
I'll try to cover some of it, but basically, I mean, you have to be kind of creative. There's different types of cameras that can be used. So I will tell you exactly what kind of camera I used,
okay.
but yeah, I would plan my interactions with my coworkers and try to elicit information from them. So I would I'd say, hey, I'm going to go talk to Sean Browder about why they're flagging right-wing extremist groups globally, like why is that a priority for Facebook? And so I'd ask him questions about the policy, and he was very he kept his personal opinion out of it a lot of the time, but he had a deep knowledge of Facebook's policies. So I planned those interactions, and then I would talk to my coworkers. And the last couple of months I was filming pretty steadily. So I sometimes I even forgot I had the camera on. But there's a movie with Matt Damon, The Informant, I believe, where he was informing for the FBI on some like price rigging for in the 90s. I don't know. So yeah, it's kind of similar to that. I mean, just obviously I wasn't working for a government agency, but so I'll tell you something I haven't really said in any interviews, and this is kind of funny or weird, but back in when was this, 2014, 2015, I was working for Uber. And I picked this lady up, and she's like, oh yeah, I manage escorts in New Jersey. I'm like, oh great, you manage escorts in New Jersey, right? And then she started talking about how her boyfriend was like, well, this the conversation got to like drugs somehow. I don't know. And I took next day I took her to another appointment where and I won't get into what she was doing with a client, but on the way back, she's like, "Hey, let's go buy. Can you take me to the store? I'm going to buy some whippets. You know what whippets are?"
Sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So so I planned that second trip and picked her up, and it wasn't an official Uber trip, and she paid me cash for it. But I ended up like getting a voice recorder and like recording her conversation, and she was talking about how her boyfriend was going to do all these drugs, and I sent that to the FBI. So like I have a background in security, so I wouldn't say I'm not an informant, obviously, but I'm just like on one occasion I did send some tips to the FBI. So that was probably like my first experience. This was way back like 5-6 years ago, like recording someone.
Okay.
So once again, I was a novice. I didn't know what I was doing, and probably in over my head. But
well, now that
you have that inner voice telling you to do it, though. That's the thing, though. That's the light in you.
Well, now that we know what the FBI is all about, yeah. Would you have done that differently?
But his heart was in the right place, and
so now the headline's going to be FBI refers former tipster to Project Veritas.
Exactly, something like that, dude. Oh my gosh. All right. So you know what? I hope that people hear that, and like look at it logistically and look at their circumstances. Because I'm sure we have a lot of folks that, I actually know for a fact that there are listeners that work in some of these organizations. You know what I mean? Like maybe you work in the healthcare field and you're not in a state that's being, targeted for destruction right now. Or maybe you work at a pharmaceutical company. Maybe you work at like a pharmacy, or you work at some of these. Or maybe you're a government employee and you're starting to see some of this stuff. Okay, so what Ryan's saying is like figure out a way to get some sort of hidden thing on like some sort of camera or some recording device, and then elicit these conversations from these folks that you feel are questionable or could offer up information that maybe could be beneficial to our movement. I think this is how we're going to win this war, is that we were going to expose the hypocrisy and the criminality from the inside out. So I hope that people listening to this feel empowered. If you're in one of these organizations and if maybe it's been speaking to you on a subconscious level and you haven't found the courage yet to do it. Start doing it.
And maybe they could also reach out to Project Veritas, because how was your experience working with them? I mean,
yeah, it was outstanding. I mean, yeah, you can definitely reach out to Project Veritas if there's someone watching this now that sees something going wrong at whatever level you are. Because I was entry level. at Facebook. I wasn't like an engineer, or I wasn't in upper management, and I discovered so much. But yeah, you can send them a message at veritastips@protonmail.com. They're great to work with. Technology is such a double-edged sword, because you look at all the censorship going on, but at the same time, we have, these encrypted apps, we have Telegram, we have Signal, we have WhatsApp that we can use to communicate and blow the whistle. And I know human rights, watch groups use these apps, and everyday citizens should be using these to record things. And we had the Antifa story that just came out. Yeah. There was a photo of the flag in the classroom. Someone, maybe it was a student, took a photo of that, documented it. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I think these tools can be great for exposing bias and corruption.
Yep, that's the secret. So yes, anybody out there, just if you're feeling it on your heart, definitely do it. I don't care if you're at a school or if you're a student. I don't care what. And if you're scared, reach out to us, reach out to Ryan, like reach out to Project Veritas.
It's a huge community of people that will support and help you and plug you into the right resources and the right emails and the right, organizations.
And give you a platform, and you won't be alone.
Yeah. And it is interesting now, with all the kids going back to school, and there's all the stuff about masks and parents deciding whether they're going to send their kids to school. But at the same time, so how many parents have just woken up to these things that are being taught in the schools, right? So now if you are sending your kid into school, you kind of have an idea that there could be a teacher like this in there, right? Like you might be watching a little bit more. You might talk to your kid at the end of the day a little bit more, find out what they're telling your kid. I know if my kid were to go to public school, which I mean, at this point, my kids are not, but But if things changed and I decided my kids it would be acceptable, I would feel like I would have to have a discussion every single day.
Yeah.
What did your teacher teach you in this class, right? Like you almost have to deprogram them at this point.
Did anything make you uncomfortable? Is there anything we talk about at home that's different than what your teachers talk about? I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's not that learning something different than what you talk about at home is a wrong thing, but parents need to be aware of what is being told and taught to their children, because that is the whole point. They're in formative years. They're in and they're little sponges. And we know that the public school curriculum throughout the United States in particular is aimed at completely stripping the unity of the family away from the children and to turn the children against the family. So parents, you do need to be aware. I mean, even the families that are saying, well, I have to put my kids in a mask, I can't not send them to school. Everybody has their thing. But as a parent, I mean, it's incumbent upon you. That's why your kids have you. You have to be looking out for them. So
it was probably about a year ago when we had Dean Reiner on, and he was talking about his daughter. I think she was 6 at the time. Yeah. They were giving her Black Lives Matter coloring books and World Health Organization. It's like I'm like you should know as a parent, you should be very aware what they're teaching your children.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you seen that movie Captain Fantastic?
Ooh, I don't think so.
My kids have, maybe my older kids.
So it's a movie. So it's the same actor as I always know him as the Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
Wow. Okay.
Viggo Mortensen, I think.
Viggo Mortensen.
Okay.
Viggo Mortensen. So yeah, I think it's called Captain. Is it Captain or Mr.? Yeah, Captain Fantastic or Mr. Fantastic. But it's basically this guy who, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. He's raising his 4 kids in the middle of the wilderness, and he's teaching them literature, and they're really smart and they're athletic. And then his wife passes away. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they have to go. Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, I'm just saying that's one of the end of the spectrum where you have these. You've got homeschoolers, and then this Captain Fantastic's even farther there, where he's teaching his kids completely separate from society, where they can't even function in society. Mm-hmm. So it's tough because it's that middle ground where you're like, yes, I want them to be able to function in society, but I have a brother who has a 5-year-old daughter who does not allow. They don't watch TV at all. They don't have the iPad. They don't plop them in front of the iPad watching shows all day. And so yeah, we got to find that balance but it's getting to that point where what they're teaching at school, and the school is so extreme. Yeah, you really have no alternative. You got to pull your kids out of school.
Yeah. And I don't want to give away the ending, but what about that movie, The Village, right? Something like that, right?
I'm 100% down if anyone wants to jump into our Truthzilla DMs to. Yes. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of us that want to get together and buy a huge plot of land and just farm it and have.
We know people that are very actively looking for people who want to get involved in a deal like that. We know people that are looking for investors and people that are looking for people to be there.
But we need more of us that have, because I think the thing is too with getting into land, some of it's I don't have $100,000 in my bank account.
It's that's my limitation.
To be able to do it. But me with 5 other people, if we each have whatever $5,000 or what, depending on. I just feel like that there's safety in numbers, there's community in numbers, there's a whole other way of doing things that I think is possible, plausible, and probably gonna have to be the option for a lot of us.
If anybody's interested in that,
the years to come.
I know folks that are looking for people right now here in Oregon.
Yep.
You guys need to do international seasteading. You need to build your own country out in the middle of the international waters. There's people working on those ideas.
Seasteading.
Or you can be like the guru from India. What's his name? There's a Netflix show called Wild Wild Country, and actually happened in Oregon in the 80s.
Yeah. That was the Rajneesh.
Okay.
Yeah, Rajneesh. Yep. Yeah, but I mean, they went a little bit.
Yeah.
Now there's some negative aspects to that, and I watched the documentary. I binged it in the night, watching my kid. And there's some obviously negative aspects of that, but I did like how they all worked together and they created their own community.
Great.
We'll leave it at that. I'm not going to draw any more comparisons,
totally. Hey, you know what I mean?
There's a lot going on.
I feel like that's a lot of these folks that are targeted and demonized in the media, like the Rajneesh or Ruby Ridge or Waco, a lot of these, I don't know, man, I don't know, or Ted Kaczynski. I mean, I don't know. Have you guys ever read Industrial Society and its Future?
That's on the backseat of my car. But every time I park somewhere where there's going to be other people, I'm like, is anyone going to look in my car? Or in my mind, I was like, is someone dark and ominous following me because of the stuff we say on these microphones? So I'm like, should I turn that book cover down? Because I'm still reading through it.
Yeah. Industrial Society and its Future. future. It's
Yeah.
a great one. I'm sorry, Ryan, to get you pinned into this conversation. Holy
I
shit, but-
technological slavery. I have technological slavery, and then it's industrial society and its futures is like contained within it, is what it is. So
Anyway,
I read sci-fi, so
There you
I'm
go.
honestly not into nonfiction, and I literally thought my first book would be a sci-fi book,
oh,
but it's actually a nonfiction.
dude. Okay.
So like I read like Isaac Asimov, like Caves of Steel, which is really fascinating because you'll delve into that how you interact with technology. But yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, are you working on a sci-fi novel now that you have your like literary prestige built up? And like, dude, I feel like your perspective and your voice and the way you see the world would be such an amazing vessel for putting out the type of science fiction that we need, like science fiction, science fact. I mean, anything we could speculate as to what the future has in store, I feel is on the table at this point. Like, there's nothing outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I really should. I've been thinking about writing a book about like the Arizona audits and some of the election things that I've witnessed. But no, that would be really fun, like writing a sci-fi book. In the past I've like started a little bit, but now I've actually written one. I know what it takes.
Exactly.
I know that the type of techno music I need to keep me
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I've been, throughout this whole journey, I've been working on my own little book that I've been writing, and I haven't picked it up in a few months, but it's happening.
it's an incredible,
it's fun.
incredible thing.
It's fun. But anyway, Ryan, so another thing I wanted to ask you about is you have the Hartwig Foundation for Free Speech. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Harwig Foundation for Free Speech, isn't the IRS fun?
Yeah.
So it's a 501c3. So I applied for 501c3 status in February, and I had an attorney file it and everything. And I called the IRS a couple of days, like last week, and I literally waited for like 2.5 hours to get someone on the phone. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, we haven't even started to it's in process, but there's no update." I'm like, "Okay, it's been 6 months, so they're probably slow walking it." But yeah, it's an Arizona nonprofit, and we're Zach Voorhees is on my board.
Nice.
We're basically advocating for free speech on the internet. So we're doing a lot of good things. I'm going to be interviewing Congressman Paul Gosar next week, talking about big tech censorship. We want to be organizing some events, but basically just getting the word out there. I mean, we need to take a stand against big tech, regardless of your ideology.
Yeah. Like
this censorship is not cool. If you can censor the sitting president, but then still allow the spokesman for the Taliban to have his Twitter account, that's something's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of these issues, censorship, medical freedom, like these are things that transcend beyond a political affiliation or any left-right ideology. These are basic, like fundamental human rights. And anybody that's still caught up and feels like censorship is a good idea or feels like they should make decisions about my body and my health, then they're caught in something that just we have no use for it anymore. We've grown past that. And I hope that these
media spell.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that these issues, these particular issues, reach like a boiling point to where people finally do wake up. I mean, that's it right there. Like they're gonna keep pushing. Like we're just in the very first stages of this. I have a feeling, you know what I mean? And it's gonna be the type of thing where censorship, if it was up to them, we wouldn't have a voice. If it was up to them, we would not have any platform or any ability to get our message out because it's dangerous. Like how can they like I hear Alex Jones saying it's like they can't. The New World can't exist with platforms like InfoWars, and then the New World Order can't exist with books like Behind the Mask of Facebook, and then the New World Order cannot exist as long as we're out here talking about it. So, whatever means that they need to do to silence it, they're going to do. And it's just a matter of they're just being delicate, and they know they can't push too far because then everybody will wake up. And so this gradual
so we picked the
boiling,
disinformation dozen.
Yeah.
Then we had the bunch.
Yep. Yep. So you just discredit people one at a time and just take down one video at a time, and just eventually it creates this whole media ecosystem where only their narrative is being heard, and only enough voices get amplified on our side for them to have their 2 minutes of hate, right? Their 2 minutes of hate towards all of us who are
trying to save everybody else.
Yeah. But I would say though, is as hard as they push, I feel like they're losing this battle.
They are.
Like
they're getting desperate.
I mean, I feel like every time they shut down a YouTube channel, every single one I've seen got shut down. They open up their own website or whatever, and they grow. They grow every single time.
Yeah.
Highwire.
Yeah.
Thanks for the shirt, by the way. I just got me this for my birthday here, so that was awesome.
Yeah, we need to as citizens, we really need to understand like it's funny because my dad, he quit Amazon, and I still have Amazon actually, like Amazon Prime. But you think about the power of the consumer, so we got to support products like Gab, PocketNet.app, like blockchain, social media,
Float.app.
Clout Hub, And think about 80 million consumers. If literally 80 million people just said, hey, we're not going to buy a single thing from Amazon, like it would make an impact. Maybe not. I mean, they still make like $300 billion a year. But I mean, yeah, even on a smaller level, like if we chose not to use Google and choose to use Proton Mail or DuckDuckGo, it makes an impact. So yeah, never doubt the power of the consumer. But yeah, this battle, it's going to rage on. We're going to see parallel cultures, parallel infrastructures, economies.
Yep.
But we got to keep fighting.
Yep.
And yeah, this book is going to help you in that fight because you're going to really understand like the inner workings of Facebook. Like, what are they actually doing behind the scenes? We know they censor conservatives, but like, how blatant and shocking is it? It's pretty bad. So hopefully this book gets used in future lawsuits as well.
Totally.
And hopefully we can sue the government under the Fifth Amendment. And I hope Trump's lawsuit is successful as well.
I hope so too. Absolutely. Right on. Well, Ryan, let's take a moment here and make sure you send our listeners everywhere you want them to go, like websites, how to get your book, more information about your foundation, everything.
So yeah, my main website is ryanhartwig.org.
Cool.
So you can go to ryanhartwig.org. That has the links to everything. If you want a signed copy of my book, you can send me an email at ryanhartwig@protonmail.com. I can do a signed copy for you. But yeah, the info for my foundation's on there as well. I'm on Gab primarily right now. I got suspended on Twitter.
Go figure.
But yeah, feel free to reach out to me via email or through my website. I'm pretty easily reachable. And I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Cool. Awesome. Ryan, thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Dude, keep pushing, keep fighting. Yep. Don't get discouraged. Don't let these demons get one over on you, man. And then we'll check in here soon, okay? I know you and I are working on a project behind the scenes, good. So yeah, we'll be in touch.
Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, we'll let you know how that goes.
All right. All right, later, brother.
Thanks,
have
Ryan.
a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
That's nice to catch up with him.
Heck yeah.
Good work, dude. You just led that. You're pretty good interviewer.
Carried that very well.
Well, I kind of zeroed in on the fact that I think that's the secret. Like, this is going to be the secret. We need whistleblowers. We need people to come forward with and just be courageous.
That was really driven home to me, too, with just lately with that teacher down there. I've been watching that pretty close. I don't know why. I've just, like, watched all the things about it, and I'm just like, because the outcry for it. And like what they did with Veritas too is like, this is the email address to the principal, this is the email address to the board member, this, and like everyone, people from all over the country were like inundating them. That's it. And people, that's what we need to do.
This is it. So you out there, you know who you are. If you're listening right now, I'm speaking directly to you. You know who you are. Get brave, get a microphone, start filming these bastards, and let's win this thing.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Everybody, oh my goodness, it was wonderful to have Ryan Hartwig back with us. Please go and find his new book, Behind the Mask of Facebook. Go check him out, the Hartwig Foundation for Free Speech. And until next time.
But wait, it's so great to have you back.
Oh yeah, it's so nice to be here.
Woo! Yes, we had people. I was posting some promotional stuff in our channel, and people are only worried about you. They're like, is Megan okay? Like, I'm like, yeah.
Because I wasn't last week. Yeah. So thank you for who noticed that I wasn't here and said something.
I was trying to bolster my own stuff, right? I was trying to bolster all my whistleblower stuff, and the only response I got was, is Megan okay? And I'm like, yes, Megan's great. I'm just kidding. I was just teasing. Yeah, great. Yeah. Welcome back, Megan. It's still literally not the same. Like, either one of you, like, we were down Ed for a few weeks, and it's like, it's just not the same. Yeah. I need you guys.
But we keep trucking along.
We keep trucking along.
Well, we deal with our things. Yep. So anyways, it's lovely to be back here at the table with you two. I missed you both. And everybody, until next time, I am Megan, sitting here with my good friends, Scott and Ed. I wish all of you, Scott wishes all of you, Ed wishes all of you intellectual prosperity. Good night.